Hi everybody, this is the commentary on the second lecture of Foundations of Esotericism, and it looks like it may need 3 or 4 days to read a short 8 pages because it's very dense. But a couple of themes that come up for me is that, as I said yesterday, or in the last video, that this is a lecture cycle where Rudolf Steiner is developing his own ideas between Western esoteric ideas, Eastern esoteric ideas, and the role of Christ as a cosmic impulse and as a cosmic being in the evolution of human consciousness and therefore the evolution of our world. And here already in this lecture we see he develops at the end of the lecture an idea of what it means that the Christ entered into the earthly evolution and therefore helped us in our post-death experiences. Now this particular lecture has a lot to do with our post-death experiences according to what we've done. So when I read this book, at the top of each lecture I wrote a little theme. And so lecture 2 I wrote 3 ideas of human nature, which is in the first sentence really. But he talks about these ideas, 3 ideas that are important for the human nature. One is activity or movement, wisdom, which is called the word, and thirdly, the will. And these are related in the lecture to 3 important aspects of our human nature. And it's here that we may already need to pause for those who haven't got a working knowledge of Steiner's concept of the human being. But initially, I suppose, there's a very important aspect when we talked about the 7 phases of consciousness yesterday. We also have 7 aspects of the human being. In this particular lecture, he talks about the 3 sort of closest to our physical experience, the physical body, and then the life within us, which in these lectures is called the etheric body. And then the part that the human being at this point is the most responsible for creating and therefore working on is the astral body. And he relates each of these to that, and he talks about the activity, these 3 aspects of the human being. And he gives this wonderful thing. He says, I'll just read you this. We have the following ascent. Firstly, karma, activity, which needs to be balanced. Secondly, wisdom, what has been brought to rest. And thirdly, will, with such an overabundance of life that it can sacrifice itself. Thus, activity, wisdom, and will are the 3 stages in which all being flows. So even the creative beings that have put into place our physical body and our life body, so we inherit our physical body and our life body as an inheritance from other creative beings. But at this point in Earth evolution, we are developing our own astral body. And he talks about karma as a kind of an action and a reaction. And it is in this realm that we need to bring rhythm into our soul. So we work with the principle in our astral body of desire, and that desire causes a particular activity, and then it requires a counter activity or a counter effect. And this is a lot of the work that we have to do in our life at the moment, is through our desires, in our soul, we could say, in our astral body, that we are driven to do something, but like a pendulum, we have a counter effect, and that needs to be balanced. And that continues into our life after death, that we can continue balancing in the first aspects or time in our time after death, the effects and the counter effects in our astral body. And while we're doing that, he says we can work on, even now as we are alive and in our day-to-day life, bringing a rhythm into this effect and counter effect of the desires in our astral body. And when we bring that into a rhythm, into a balance, we start to bring its effects into the etheric body. And so the etheric body, the life body within us, is that which is directed by rhythm. And he says the karma that has been brought into balance through rhythm, and this may take lifetimes, becomes immortal in our etheric body. That's an amazing thing. So all the things that we desire and counter desire, and we slowly bring them into a centered balance and become restful in the rhythm, gets inscribed into our etheric body as wisdom. He says wisdom is the daughter of karma. Wonderful picture. that wisdom, Sophia, is the daughter of karma that has been developed by the work of the human being in our souls, in our astral body, to bring through rhythmical going through from desire to counter-effect of desire, understanding and wisdom of that which is required of us. So in wisdom, in rhythm, everything is completed and balanced. In the human being, everything rhythmical, filled with wisdom, is in the etheric body. He says the will, on contrast, the third part, is what's creative within us. And this becomes quite important for us in respect to even how we were talking about, or I was talking yesterday about the world around us, the animals around us are kind of a secretion of our astral body, that the animal is the other half of our astral body, that we need to reincorporate as a creative force within our will. And so he talks about the will in this way, in saying that the will is the creative element in us which becomes productive. That's an interesting process that we will now follow, that when we've worked through and transformed the whole of our astral body, we will have reached a stage of freedom. And then we can say that our freedom is the entire result of our own activity in bringing our karma to wisdom in our etheric body. And then we will, with time, learn how to develop that, which becomes part of the next lectures, is how that will then becomes a very important part of our ability to create. The part of the astral body which has been worked into the etheric body as rhythm is immortal. So I'm trying to paraphrase a number of these things here. There are obviously themes that I'm going to jump over. But what Rudolf Steiner then says, if we become too involved with a particular process in this balancing, we will, in our next lifetime, meet that very peculiar, rather than being with that very peculiar interest in a particular desire or a particular aspect of our lifetime, comes to us. And we can see that in our times, he says, that we will begin to see people who start to get a kind of a neurotic tendency, as if something is watching them, something is observing them. And he says this is that one thing that we've become too obsessed with in any particular lifetime, comes back as a kind of a particular aspect of our guardian of our threshold, or the double that's there to teach us how we look and deal with our karma. So this particular aspect of the guardian of the threshold is to bring us our karmic gesture that we need to look at. But if we become too singular in any particular aspect, it can feel as if that thing is looking at us as a shadow, that we walk through life as if we're being observed. And a counterbalance to that, and this is where this becomes quite interesting, because the day before, I talked about this lecture cycle is held between Rudolf Steiner writing Christianity as a mystical fact, and him starting to give lectures in 1906 about the Gospels over the next 7 or 8 years. Between 1906 and 1914, he gave about 26 volumes of lectures on the Bible and the sacred scriptures. And here he's starting to develop his ideas of Christ. And he says, if we can find this relationship to Christ, we will find that if we can take the Christ impulse into our astral body as part of the balancing of the desires, in the past, in the post-death experience, we will start to find what he calls a meaningful understanding of the atonement of Christ's death, that we can start through Christ to bring a balance in our post-death experience to the swings in our karma, and start to build rhythm and therefore wisdom in our etheric body, which later becomes that creative impulse in the will, which we will talk more of next time. So when we see wisdom as the daughter of karma, all karma finds its compensation in wisdom. So once we have reached a particular phase of this, of development, we can call ourselves a sun hero or a Christ being. So that is because our inner life in the astral body has become rhythmical and starts to develop wisdom in our life bodies. Then our life becomes an image of the sun, which runs its rhythmical course through the heavens. So he starts to develop his ideas of the work of the Christ being in our day-to-day life. Literally, in our everyday life, our work at this point is to work within our astral body, to bring the effects and the counter effects of our desire into a rhythm with each other and find a centered space. And the Christ being, if we find an active relationship to the Christ impulse, a mystical Christ impulse, we can start to see how they can help us to birth wisdom within our life. So there's some themes. These lectures are very short. They're only 8 pages long, but they are very, very pithy, and I'm surprised I even got through what I did in however long I've just been talking. So onwards and upwards. Tomorrow's task is to read lecture 3, and then on Friday I will give a comment on lecture 3. And the further we go, the harder it's going to be to keep our mind straight. So first lecture, the 7 stages of consciousness. The second lecture, the 3 aspects of the human being. And those 3 aspects, sorry, I just want to find the page again. The 3 ideas of human nature: activity, wisdom, and the will. Activity as karma, wisdom as the word that has found the balancing, the fruit of our activity in our balancing of our desires, and then the creative will, which will come further in the next lectures as to how that actually develops. Okay, well, keep isolating, be happy, bye.